Hello everyone, welcome back to the Budget Sportsman, and thank you so much for joining me on today's video where we are going to be talking about the best rangefinders if you're on a budget. Over this past hunting season, I have been using and comparing these 4 different rangefinders, and today I intend to give you the pros and cons of each, as well as give you some idea of which one might be right for you if you're on a tight budget. So with that said, let's go ahead and introduce you to each of these 4 different rangefinders. Starting with the most expensive and working our way down, first one on the list is the Muddy. This is the LR650X. On Amazon right now, it's coming in at $125. Next on the list is going to be this rangefinder from a company called GoGoGo. And right now on Amazon, it comes in at $90. Next on the list is the Halo XL450. Seems to be a very popular option in this budget category. Seems like the price fluctuates quite a bit, but at the time of this video, it's $82. And last but not least, we have the Bushnell Chuck Adams Bowhunter Edition Rangefinder. This is the rangefinder that I've been using for almost 8 to 10 years now, and I wanted to go ahead and put it up against these other newer model rangefinders to see how it holds up. Now, this is out of production, but if you are interested in buying a used one, you can sometimes find them on eBay for somewhere around the $50 to $75 mark, making it the cheapest option if you are willing to buy used. Now, I do want to mention here at the outset that if you're interested while watching this video in buying any of these rangefinders, I do have Amazon links down in the description. It doesn't cost you anything to use them, but it does give me a small commission, which helps me make more videos just like this one. With that said, let's go ahead and look at each of these rangefinders and talk about the pros and cons of each. Again, we'll go through the same order we just did, from most expensive down to the least expensive. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about the Muddy LR650X. Now, initial impressions right out of the box were quite good. I really like the feel of this in my hand. I like the look. I like the finish of it. I'm quite a fan of the build of the Muddy. One of the things I appreciate is that in comparison to something like the Halo in this hand, the Muddy is quite a bit thinner and just makes it feel really nice in the hands. One of the things you'll notice, it has a bit of a cup here that kind of positions your fingers just perfectly where those buttons are and right where your fingers need to be. Again, as far as the build and the feel of my hands, I really like the Muddy. Speaking of the buttons, one of the things that you're going to notice is that it has 2 buttons. The one here is the power or range button, while the other one is the switch modes. Now, every rangefinder that I've ever used has put the power/range button underneath your pointer finger. For some reason, Muddy switched those 2 buttons, and when I hold this comfortably in my hand, my pointer finger is on the mode button, while my middle finger is on the power or range button. That just seems very awkward to me. I'm sure if you use this rangefinder on a daily basis, or this was your regular go-to rangefinder, you would get used to it and probably become second nature in no time. I just don't understand why Muddy would choose to do it that way. Now, the Muddy rangefinder does have 5x magnification, and the eyepiece here actually is a focusing knob. Now, that sounds great that you're able to get perfect focus for your particular eyes, but unfortunately what happens is this knob actually sticks out beyond the edge of the rangefinder. And I stick this in my pocket, pull it out, and almost every time it would be out of focus. Now for me in a hunting situation, I simply don't want to have to mess around with trying to get perfect focus every time I want to use my rangefinder. It's very annoying, and that comes close to being a deal breaker for me. Whether it is for you or not, you have to decide. But there are some other bigger issues. Before I get into those bigger issues, let me just mention that on paper, the Muddy is actually a pretty full-featured rangefinder that has a good variety of features for this price range. One thing that it does have that I really appreciate and enjoy is the 1/10 of a yard readout. So in other words, instead of just giving you whole yardages like 20, 21, 22, 23, etc., it would give you 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 20.4, and give you that 1/10 of a yard, theoretically making it more accurate, and to be honest, it's just really fun to use. It does have 4 different modes. The first one is going to be your just standard line of sight rangefinder. The second mode is going to be your angle compensated mode, which Muddy calls horizontal distance. The third mode is going to be your scan mode, and the 4th mode is going to be speed mode, which does not do miles per hour, it only does kilometers per hour. Now, one thing that I want to mention is the 4 different modes are completely separated. For instance, you can't use the scan mode while you're in angle compensation mode. They're totally separate. Another thing to mention is that sometimes it can be a little tricky to actually tell which mode you're in. For instance, the standard line of sight mode and the horizontal distance mode look exactly the same with the exception of a very small HD that comes up down in the corner. So if you really want to make sure you're getting that angle compensated distance, you really have to train your eye to look for that HD down in the corner. With that out of the way, let me get to some of the big negatives of this rangefinder. I've mentioned a few of the smaller ones. Let's talk about the big ones. Number one, it has a very, very slow response and read time. It was noticeably slower than any of these other rangefinders we're talking about today, even at close distances, and became especially noticeable when you were in scan mode. So rather than just being able to push the button and move around and it quickly update and give you different numbers, it was more like point at that object, wait for it to give a readout, okay, now move to the next object, wait for it to give a readout, okay, move to the next object. Just not quick and snappy. Is that a deal breaker? Again, maybe not, but here is where we really get into the main issue. And the issue is that I got very inconsistent results with the Muddy rangefinder. All of these rangefinders, or at least all of the other rangefinders, were almost always within a yard or at most 2 yards of each other in my testing all the way out to 300 yards. However, the Muddy was grouped right with them about 50% of the time, and the other 50% of the time it would just give you random numbers, usually numbers that were too long. So for instance, we were ranging at 100 yards. All the others were giving me 99 and 100. This one was reading 99 some of the time, and then the rest of the time was giving me 109 and 107. I wish I would have taken better notes, but I believe there's a couple times when it even gave me numbers that were up to 15 yards too long, especially when I was out there at those longer distances. Now, if you're just looking for ballpark numbers, this is going to work, but I'm just going to tell you it does not give me a lot of confidence when it can't give me consistent numbers. It also means that I need to range 2, 3, 4, 5 times just trying to figure out if there's any kind of a pattern and which number might be the most accurate. There were even a few times when it gave me a fail to read or some kind of an error and just simply wouldn't give me a number at all, and I would have to try again. That didn't happen a lot, but it didn't happen at all on any of these other rangefinders. So overall, for $125, yes, it has some good features, but I really was not impressed with the actual functionality and even some of the design features of the Muddy. Pretty disappointing. I really wanted to like the Muddy rangefinder. Next up, let's talk about the GoGoGo rangefinder. Now, before I get into it, I want to mention that if you type in rangefinder into Amazon, you're going to come up with a whole array of rangefinders with names that you probably don't recognize. A lot of them actually look like they have fairly decent features, and a lot of them look very similar to each other. And so I wanted to include at least one into this comparison to see how these off-brands would hold up to maybe some things with a more recognizable name. Now, GoGoGo was actually kind enough to send this to me for the review, but don't worry, you're going to get my fair, honest opinion of this rangefinder. They're not paying me, and they're certainly not telling me what to say. Now, first impressions out of the box, I have to tell you, was a negative thing. Pulled it out, and it just feels like a brick. Again, if we were to compare it to the Muddy, hopefully you can see the comparison there. It is just way thicker. Even at the base, it's way thicker. And then toward the middle, it even gets a little thicker. So in my hand, and I've got, man hands, fairly decent sized hands, it feels pretty big in the hands, just not quite as comfortable, just doesn't fit quite as well. However, there are some things about the GoGoGo that I actually really like. And one of them are these buttons. First of all, they put them in the right position. Put my hand just naturally there, and my pointer finger falls right on that power range button, and my middle finger falls on that mode button with no problems at all. Very, very natural. The next thing I like in regards to the buttons is that they actually give you a very satisfying click. They're very easy to push, a good solid click. You just feel like you've got that feedback to know that you really got a good press of that button. Now, while the Muddy has a 5x magnification, the GoGoGo has 6x, and I'll be honest, this had one of the most clear views and best images through the rangefinder. Easy to read numbers, just a really nice view with that 6x magnification. It does have a focusing eyepiece here, and the thing that I appreciated about the eyepiece is that it's very stiff. While you can move it to focus, I really didn't have problems putting this in and out of my pocket and having it go out of focus. Once I set it to where it needed to be, it was pretty much in focus unless I tried to range something really far and focus on that and then focus on something really close. But if I just set the focus to a mid-range, most of the time worked really well for me. Now when it comes to features, it has a very similar feature set to what the Muddy has. It also gives you a 1/10 of a yard readout. It gives you an angle compensation mode with a caveat. It has a scan mode, and it has a speed mode. Now in the standard mode, you just push the button once to give yourself a readout. You push it and hold it to go into scan mode. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the GoGoGo is that it is super fast. As opposed to the Muddy, which was super slow, The GoGoGo was actually quite snappy, quite responsive, and especially when you got into scan mode, you felt like you could just move around pretty quickly and get updated readings, especially when you were at those closer ranges. I was actually quite impressed. Now, here's where the big negative comes in with the GoGoGo. When I started testing the angle compensation, I found that it was giving me some very strange numbers that in my mind as a bow hunter for a lot of years just weren't making sense. So I pulled out the manual and found out that the angle compensation, which GoGoGo calls slope compensation, is intended for golfers and not for hunters. What that means is that the angle compensation in this rangefinder is totally unusable for hunters, which is a real bummer because frankly, there's a lot of things that I do like about this rangefinder. So overall, it's clunky, but I like the buttons, I like the features, I like the focus, I like the view through it, I like the readout inside, but the angle compensation for me as a bow hunter is a bit of a deal breaker because I need angle compensation. One thing I forgot to mention, as far as the external, it is a bit of a plasticky feel, but that's my pros and cons of the GoGoGo. Next up is the Halo XL450, and I honestly don't quite know what to tell you about this rangefinder. It seems very popular in the budget category, but I wasn't really all that impressed. First impressions is it feels just as clunky in my hands as the GoGoGo, a little bit too big, and it looks cool, has a lot of cool lines and cool shapes to it, but some of them just don't feel natural in my hands. Now, one thing that you're going to notice is that the button for the power and range is in front of the mode, similar to the Muddy. However, the positioning is much different. So the positioning for that power button is still very natural for that pointer finger. The mode button is actually behind it, and you would have to kind of stretch back to reach that. One thing that I appreciate is that the power range button is higher. It's got a texture to it. It's a much larger button, while the mode button is lower. It's smooth and a much smaller button. So there's really no confusion there. I don't have a problem with these buttons. They land where you would expect them to be for the main function. Now, what I do have a problem with is the positioning of this eyepiece. Now, you could compare this to any of these other rangefinders, and you'll see that the eyepiece is right here along the top line toward the top of the rangefinder. Halo, for some reason, decided to put the eyepiece right in the middle, and you would not believe how many times I pulled this up to my eye, and the eyepiece landed right about there. Again, this is one of those things that if you bought this, you used it all the time, it was your regular rangefinder, I'm quite sure you would get used to. I simply don't understand why they would choose to do it. It's just simply not natural. The Halo does have 6x magnification with a focusing eyepiece right here. Now, I would say this eyepiece lands somewhere between the GoGoGo and the Muddy. Not as good as the GoGoGo, but definitely not as bad as the Muddy. I still had some issues with it coming out of focus, but not as often as with the Muddy. When it comes to features, it's going to have a little bit less features than the two we've looked at so far, but again, it is a little bit lower price range. There are two main modes. One is your regular line of sight mode, and the second is your angle compensated mode. But it also has scan mode, which is available in either one of those two previous modes by simply holding down the power button and you'll enter into scan mode. I really appreciate that it's not a separate mode, but it can be used in those two modes at any point. One of the things that I don't particularly like about the Halo is that the text inside the readout and display is semi-transparent. Not much, but it's just not a solid, bold black letter. It's a little bit see-through and it makes it just slightly harder to read. The other thing that I noticed is that I had more issues on the Halo with glare, depending on my positioning to the sun, than on these other rangefinders, and it would make it a little bit harder to see my target clearly in certain conditions. Overall, I would say the Muddy is fairly simple and does what it's supposed to do just fine. It's not difficult to use, but there are some things that I wasn't really a big fan of, and it really didn't impress me a whole lot. The last rangefinder is this Bushnell Chuck Adams Edition rangefinder, and initial impressions, well, like I mentioned, initial impressions happened a long time ago. I've been using this rangefinder for probably 8 to 10 years now. Originally, it had a nice soft touch coating to it that's pretty much all worn off down to plastic. But one thing I appreciate about the Bushnell is it's probably the most compact rangefinder that we're comparing here today. It would probably be rivaled in thickness by the Muddy, but overall height, I don't know if you can see that, but the Bushnell is still significantly shorter than the Muddy. Fits in my pocket well, it fits in my hand well. Now, one thing that you're going to notice here is that it only has one button, and I'll mention that more in a minute, but it does not have a power and mode button. It just simply has one button. If I was to have a complaint about the Bushnell, it would be that the button is very soft. There's no tactile click or feedback to it at all. And something I didn't realize I did not like until I tried some of these other rangefinders and found out how much I appreciate having a little bit of feedback or a click on the button. Now this is a 4x magnification. If I was to make a complaint, again, I really enjoy the 6x magnification on some of these other rangefinders. There are often times that I don't carry binoculars and I only use this for magnification. So this does have less magnification. The advantage is that this eyepiece is not a focusing eyepiece. And so it's quite handy. I never have to worry about focus. This is just set and it's always good to go. Now when it comes to features, the Bushnell does have the least amount of features. It has line of sight and angle compensation. It does not have a 1/10 of a yard readout. It does not have scan mode. It does not have a speed mode. But the thing is, it's simple and it works very well. And the way it works is with just one button. There's only one mode. You don't switch between modes. You get a horizontal distance, or I'm sorry, you get a line of sight distance, and you get an angle, and then you get the angle compensated distance on every single screen. You never have to wonder what number is it giving me. Now the disadvantage to that is you do have to train your eye to make sure you look at that angle compensated number and not just always look at the bigger line of sight number in the middle. But it's always there. You never have to question it. At this point, I'm sure I'm giving you enough information that you're probably starting to formulate your own opinions already. But I want to go ahead and give you my favorite and then work down the line to my least favorite. I'll tell you why, and then I'll tell you whether or not I think it might be right for your situation. You may have guessed it, I don't know, but my favorite is the Bushnell rangefinder here. Now you may be thinking you're biased, this is your rangefinder, you just can't let it go. You've been using it for so many years, and there's a sense in which you might be right. But I honestly started this comparison expecting to find one of these other rangefinders that I liked better with more features and end up keeping that and selling this on eBay. That's simply not going to happen. I haven't found anything that I like better than this Bushnell. Why? Well, it does not have any focus issues. It's small and compact, and it simply does what I need it to do, and it does it well with no confusion. There's no extra mode buttons, nothing to get messed up. It just works. And for my application, I don't need scan, although it might be nice. I really don't need 1/10 of a yard, though that might be nice. I certainly don't need speed mode. And so for my purposes, the Bushnell is still my favorite. Again, if you're on a tight budget and you're willing to buy used, you can pick these up sometimes for as little as $50 over on eBay. Next on my list, and kind of surprised myself, is the GoGoGo rangefinder. Again, there's a caveat here, but overall I enjoyed using this rangefinder much more than I expected with the snappy response time, the nice tactile feedback on the buttons, the 6x magnification, nice clear display inside. For me, unfortunately, I can't keep this because I simply need to have an angle compensation that works for a hunting situation, and this does not. So you might be asking, well, why are you putting it in second place? Well, because I enjoyed using it more than the other two that are still on the table, and some of you might not need angle compensation. So if you're not willing to buy used or don't want to go through the hassle of buying used, and you don't really need angle compensation, then this rangefinder really is actually not bad at all and quite enjoyable to use. Number 3 on my list is going to be the Halo XL450. Now, I have to be honest, I have a hard time recommending this camera when you could go pick this up on eBay if you're willing to do the research for less money. They're very similar in features, but the Halo does have the scan mode that the Bushnell does not, but for me, that's not a deal breaker. I just found that this rangefinder didn't feel that great in my hands. It did have focus issues at times, and I didn't care for the internal readout in addition to the fact that there was often glare. For that reason, I'm not really a big fan, but again, if you don't want to buy used and you need angle compensation, you're on a tight budget, then the XL450 might just be the way to go for you. And last, and most certainly the least, is the muddy LR650X rangefinder. To be perfectly honest with you, I would not recommend this rangefinder to anybody that I liked. It just simply has way too many issues, from the weird button position, the horrible focusing eyepiece, the fact that it has slow response time, inconsistent readings, and sometimes even gave errors where it wouldn't give a reading at all. I simply couldn't recommend that you spend $125 on this rangefinder. Any of these others would be better options. To be perfectly honest, I think if you do have $125 in your budget to spend on this rangefinder, you might be better off actually saving a few more dollars and trying to get up into a rangefinder that might be about $150 or even up to $200 rangefinder. And I think you're going to get something with much better results. If you're interested in seeing a comparison of rangefinders in that $200 category, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. As I mentioned before, if you're interested in buying any of these rangefinders, of course, except for this one on eBay, there will be some links down in the description, and it would help me out a whole lot if you would go down, click those links, and make your purchase through them. It won't cost you an extra penny. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you think my assessment of these rangefinders is accurate or a total whack. And until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.